We can ask them to think of their own personal experience. Something which works very effectively, particularly with younger students, is talking about themselves. So, new clothes. When you get new clothes, what do you do with them? Yes. What do you think clothes express about people? Things like that. At this stage, I would then move on to a reading part in which students are given a worksheet, a photocopy with 3 paragraphs on, which are 3 possible endings for the story. Now, this is a summary of the story. It's not the whole story. I said at the beginning that if they were a good group, they would get to read the whole page and would probably read it with no problems. If they're a weaker group, then you may not feel it's appropriate at this stage for them to struggle with a whole page of reading. So I have broken it down into this possibility of 3 possible endings for the story. This is the first ending. This is the second ending. And this is the third ending. All of them are paragraphs. All of them relate to the same characters of the story, the emperor, but they end very, very differently. And here the students are simply being asked to read, to understand, because they will need to understand basically the meaning of these paragraphs, but basically, not every word, and to choose the option that they like best for the story, for the ending of the story. And this is a chance for students to react to what they're reading, not to be tested on what they understood, but to react to it. They can't react very successfully if they haven't understood anything, but they don't need to understand so much to be able to react. That's why this is particularly adaptable to lower level groups or groups that have had much less exposure to longer texts. There are some words that I would have to pre-teach, I'm pretty sure, before, and I would want to do this to facilitate the reading. This word, the second word in the paragraph here, thieves. I would write it on the board and say, can anybody recognize that word? What's the singular form? I would also bring out that at this point. Thief, thief, it's an irregular plural, and it means, if necessary, I would translate it, because at this point I'm wanting to get into the reading. I don't want to spend a lot of time defining ladrón, and I might ask a good student to give me a quick definition of a thief. I would also check the meaning of the word stole, which is a verb, an irregular verb. Again, students might not identify it with steal, and there would be the tendency to think of robar, which they may confuse with robe. At the beginning, we looked at the word robe, so that might have been clarified at the beginning, but they would probably need reminding. I would teach them that stole the part of steal. And this I would let them, they would need at least probably 10 minutes for this, to read the paragraph and to discuss in pairs what they thought was best. The students that finished faster reading could then turn to the pair behind them who had also finished reading and could discuss why they thought one option was a better option than another. I would expect them to be saying things like, oh, it's not realistic, it's realistic, or he wouldn't do that. They would possibly have to use conditionals. And at a pre-intermediate level, in speaking, I wouldn't expect a student to be able to use that. They may be using grammatically unsuitable language to discuss, but for me, that's not what I'm worried about. I just want them to express their ideas with single words, if they can, with sentences. If you really felt that the group was weak, then you could put up some adjectives to describe endings, to say why they preferred one ending above another on the whiteboard. These words like realistic, or sad, or happy, or stupid, or silly, for them to use when they were giving you their explanation. But only if it were really necessary. At this stage, I would ask the students to give me feedback on... one thing you could do with them is you could ask the students to vote. It's very common for students at this stage to get bored and to, having decided what they like best, not to care about what anybody else in the classroom thinks and just want to go on to the next thing or go on to break. I would ask them when they finished reading and when they made their choice in pairs to come and write their names in under one of the options, the option for which they were going to vote, for which they preferred. That way, students might be a little bit more motivated to think for themselves about what they liked and what they preferred, and not to follow so much what everybody else was saying or thinking. It's very much an easy way for students to work sometimes, to follow everybody else and to say the same thing. That way we get through the class quicker. But it might be interesting for them to see what their other classmates thought. And to round the class off, I would ask them to say why they liked what they liked, why they liked one option more than another. They could volunteer their answers. The better students could explain this, or the students who had the option which had most votes. One student who had voted for that option could speak for why they liked it. A student who hadn't voted for it could be asked to speak and say why he or she didn't like that ending. Again, depending upon the level, the speaking level of the students. Again, at this stage, you shouldn't be too demanding what you expect of the student at a pre-intermediate level. The most important thing is they express themselves, they feel comfortable expressing themselves, and they have an opportunity of getting their meaning over. As teachers, we tend to correct our students all the time because we think that's what they want from us. But if they're clear that here you're looking for their opinion and not their correct English, they're probably a lot more likely to speak to you and say what they think and have a go. And this opportunity is very valuable. If you have a nice atmosphere in the class where students listen to each other, that doesn't always happen, I know. It's a good opportunity for them to practice respecting each other's views and hearing different views and trying to form arguments. However small they may be, it's very, very valuable for somebody to say why they find something sad or why they find something, the king to be intelligent or whatever. And that would be the end of my 50-minute class, rounding off the story. For a faster class, for a class with a higher level, there are plenty of extension activities that you could ask them to do from this. You could, at this stage, give out the whole story, which is a page long, which this will be made available to you on the website. And you can ask students to read through the whole story and to underline things which are not given in the summary. Here in the previous slides, in the options they were given, they were only given paragraphs, short summaries of the real story. In the real story, they'll see how some of the details are expanded. And you could ask them to underline in the complete copy of the story the differences, the details which add to the effectiveness of the story. A very advanced class could then go on to discuss the effects of these details on understanding the story, understanding the characters in the story. That would be one task, another reading task. Another task could be writing, where students had to write their own alternative ending to this story. It might be a little bit difficult in terms of imagination because we've already got 3 possibilities. It's hard sometimes to think of another possibility, especially given that it's a moral story and it's clearly meant to make students think in a certain way. But that could be something they could do. They could also write a dialogue, for example, if they chose the story ending number 3, which is about a king and an emperor, and where the emperor is given the clothes of a king, which was stolen by the thieves. They could then write a dialogue between the emperor and the king, which might provide some rather amusing dialogues based on real-life people and real-life dramas and conflicts, depending upon your students and their sophistication. And another thing that they could do later on is maybe to do a retelling activity where they were practicing speaking and they had to tell the story to each other in small groups of, say, 4 or 5, where they had to go around in the group saying a sentence each and continuing the story from the one before, from the previous student, to see if they could retell the story from memory. Those are some of the things that you could do with them. There are a fair number of other options as well.